go.
No, man, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to come on here. You fascinate me. You're a very fascinating guy. The obvious, anybody that can excel through the ranks and master the art of jiu-jitsu fascinates me. The more I learn about it, the more fascinated I get. But, I've kind of dug deeper, at least as much as I can, and read into your story and your travels through South America and Central America, and even some silly things. Like I saw you went back home and you're at a cemetery and you're like kind of really thinking about the past. And, I haven't found a lot of people in my life who think that way. I think that way. I think about all of the moments in time that have kind of led to where we're at right now. And I almost have to wonder if that kind of is all one and the same, that your journeys and your successes through jiu-jitsu are all kind of linked together with that insightfulness that you have. And so getting you on here, obviously I want to talk martial arts and kind of the surface level jiu-jitsu stuff, but I definitely would like to understand a little bit more what's under the gi, so to speak.
Well, I've always, since I was really young, I like history, and I like to, I think kind of what you just said, I like to see how things got to where they were. That's the initial curiosity point. And I think, as much as you can experience it yourself, whether it's going to a place that was historical or, like that cemetery that I posted a picture. That was one of my ancestors. That was he was in the Revolutionary War, like a well-known guy here in Pennsylvania. He was a Pennsylvania militia captain, and he was just a really interesting person. He was my ancestor, but you go back that far, I think it was five generations back, and they probably have 2,000 ancestors. So it was more just a historical curiosity, seeing how people were maybe different back then, how the time shaped somebody differently. I think in the case of that guy that I posted about, he was kind of some people have said he was the inspiration for that movie that they made, The Patriot, and obviously not very accurate in the movie, but he was a fascinating person in that he lived to be, according to the dates the historical dates, he was 113 when he died. He was in the war, Revolutionary War. He was with George Washington at Valley Forge, and he would later he fought in War 1812. But he was when he was really old, he walked to I think he walked most of the way to New York. He would walk 20 miles every day. He was a gunsmith, friends with General Lafayette. So he went to one of the other French generals' funerals that he had fought with in the Revolution. When he was 76, he went to England, and so just different times make people differently, and it's a really cool, that spirit of that pioneer spirit is hard for me or us to connect with, but I think it's just such a different perspective that those guys lived, and that's what I liked about that one particularly.
Yeah, it's I always ask myself, probably subconsciously, I think people from the past would be really shocked at the technological advances that we have. And, just an iPhone, fuck, man, 15 years ago, if you would have told me about an iPhone, I would have been like, no way. So somebody from the 1600s would be mind blown. But I think that there'd be just as much confusion from them on some of the stuff that we find challenging, or not necessarily the technology, but that for us, we have to get in a car to drive down the road. To your point, this guy walked to New York for a funeral, and we have some of these things that we consider issues in our lives today that I think people from the past would be just so confused that we tie ourselves into.
No, that's an interesting thing too. How much, free time that people had, and how much that they, how much we get stuck into things. You read some of the letters and things that people from that time wrote, and a lot of them, I'm sure it's not everybody, probably comes down to us, the ones, but they're very well, I think they're really well, read, and there's some groupthink there is now, but it was a little, I think that one of my good friends said, the guy that I actually went to Brazil with, he's always said sometimes a little bit of isolation will engender like creativity, you know, and and thinking on your own. And I think that sometimes you read some of the things that people wrote at that time and other times, and you're like, wow, they were really thinking, you know, they weren't as much connected, so they had to kind of think on their own, you know, and interpret things on their own.
I always found it really interesting how beautiful it was written. I mean, you'll have somebody writing about standing on the front lines, shooting a flintlock, watching their friends die around them, and it's written so eloquently. You know, it's very like pretty, and the description. But man, to your point, I think separation. I had a podcast with a guy named Evan Britton. He's a former NFL lineman who's gotten really big into mindfulness and spirituality post-career. And he's told me something on my show that I just can't get out of my head. And it's that we need to create distance between ourselves and the world if we truly want to be able to understand ourselves and make an impact in the way that we want to. And I think today's technology is like the absolute opposite of that. It sucks us in and it doesn't give us our distance. We've become one and the same with everything around us. And to come back to what your point was, I think we don't have that time to truly sit down and look at every individual scenario with an open mind and not link it together to tie, you know, oh, I have to agree with this because my other 4 opinions kind of lean that direction. And God forbid I like steer away from that, because it's all together. That's all a team. It's not separate individual ideas.
So that's what he meant by it. He meant you need to take that space and, you know, kind of outside observer, like kind of an outside observer, looking at yourself. Is that kind of what he meant? Sort of like that?
Yeah. And just distancing yourself, you know, like I think he went through a rough time with just who he was, coming out of the league. And his point, I think too, was people look to social media for comfort. Yeah. And it's the wrong thing. Like you've got to separate yourself from that. And whether it's through meditation or exercise, jiu-jitsu, to take yourself away from that outside world and to allow yourself to kind of understand who you are and what makes you tick.
No, that's a really, and I think looking at the past, you can see, maybe not see or exactly, but you get a glimpse of that for a little bit different than we're kind of immersed in now, you know, that's a great point. You can see through the writings, through the actions that they did. They weren't all enmeshed in like that. I mean, there's probably some of that as well, but groupthink, obviously, but like, I think that they were able to think on their own. And I think that's where some really good things came of at that time, you know, because they're like, well, I don't need to think like everybody in Europe thinks, or the South, or whatever it is, you know, they think different, you know. So
I don't think you had the ability to, right? Because you didn't know what the guy in the next town over was thinking, let alone the other countries or tribes. I mean, and I think that's even evident today. You look at some like Aboriginal cultures or places where I heard in Australia, the Aborigines, you can go 10 miles and the next tribe will have a whole different language that's indistinguishable from the other tribe. And that had to have been similar. Even if people spoke the same languages, just the barrier of information being able to trade, it forced people to have to come to their own conclusions.
Yeah. And an interesting one is that book that's been really popular, kind of like Silicon Valley, that Sapiens book. They talk about that, how probably, a long time ago, when there was complete, like what you're saying, the tribe, like a complete separation, there's so many different languages being spoken, and people, the customs were just like wildly different, you know, in a small geographical area. And that, that was probably more diverse. That was his point, who knows if it was true, but it's like, it might have been more diverse back then, even like we're talking like 10,000 years ago or something like that.
Hard for people to get their head around that. But if you really think about it, it's true. You're from rural Pennsylvania, right? Like I grew up in Bradford, PA. So.
Oh, okay. So I know exactly where that is.
You're like, you're Brookville, Clearfield area?
Yeah, all over. We kind of bounced around all over those towns. I went to high school in Brookville. Okay. That's right. Yeah, so we're from the same, and it's a really different culture there than even like where I'm at now. I'm in Pittsburgh now, so that's and you're where are you calling from? You're in Austin right now.
I'm in Pittsburgh as well. I'm right up in Cranberry. So
cool.
That was the other reason. Yeah, I mean, so I'm a PA guy. Grew up in Bradford. I spent a year down here in Pittsburgh in high school, my junior year, I was in the South Hills. I went and stayed with an aunt and uncle for a year. And then I moved all over after that. I lived in the Midwest. I lived on the East Coast. I kind of traveled and then settled in Pittsburgh just because it still kind of gave me the feelings of childhood, a little seclusion. And Cranberry, I mean, this is a great area. I've got 20 minutes to get downtown, but I can go out back and shoot my bow, which is like perfect,
Yeah.
you know?
Also, so you're, do you shoot a compound or do you traditional?
Compound. Yeah. Not a traditional guy. I'm still learning. I'm like a year into it of serious shooting, trying to shoot as much as I can every week, but
we should go shoot sometime. I shoot traditional mostly. I have a couple really cool bows. You'd probably like to just play around with them. I have a traditional longbow that was made by a Native American, and I have they say he's he's got it made all the equipment for the Revenant. I don't think he's working anymore, but he made me a plains bow with like sinew backing and stuff. That thing's fun to shoot. And then I have a Mongolian bow. I've been over there quite a bit in Mongolia, and I like, it's a different shoot. You know, it has those, when you pull it back, it has a stopper, you know, that's really strong recurve, and it's almost, it kicks almost like a gun. Yeah.
What's the draw weight on something like that?
So the Mongolian one that I have is it's not a super heavy draw weight. It's I think it's 60, 62 or something when they measured it, but it's they supposedly, and I find this even hard to believe, but I guess if you practice, like anything, if you do it all your life, they say some of their bows were 250 pounds.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Like,
it doesn't comprehend.
And I think it's not the same as what probably was back then when they did it all the time, but to be able to pull, that's just, especially seated, like maybe they stood, but they seated on a horse, you know, like unbelievable to be able to take that draw. So I don't know if that was true. One thing, when I was over there, I saw, this is like something that made me think that may be true. Mm-hmm. I found a lot of arrow points. We were doing like archaeological exploration there, and we were with the archaeologists from there, and they the arrow points were so heavy that some of the ones that we found, that it would have had to have been put a lot more force and power on the arrow to shoot, because they were big, heavy points. You know, some of them, not all of them, but so that then I thought, well, maybe they did have a really heavy draw. You know, like
yeah. Do the arrowheads, are they similar to what you would find here in North America as far as like the type of stone and shape, or is it a completely different?
No, these were a little bit later, like metal points, like
first,
you know, early Mongolian, you know, the different tribes that were there. We found ones that were anywhere from 2,000 years old up, that were bronze points, and they were smaller, up to the modern, like the Mongol army's points, which were metal, and they were heavy. So, you know, that, in all different shapes. They had weird shapes. They had ones that were like a half moon shape pointed out. They had ones that whistled in the air. They had ones that just big, heavy, really broad, long, skinny, but heavy. They must have used different ones for different tasks. Mm-hmm. But it was, I just seeing those, I knew, I was like, well, maybe that's true. Maybe the stories about the 250 pound, because I don't think there's anybody, I mean, maybe somebody, I don't think there's anybody that alive today that could shoot a 250 pound bow off a horse, you know, like that's.
If it could be done, Cam Hanes would have posted a video about it already.
Yeah, he probably would have tried it, but yeah. So that's one of the. I got to wrestle over there a little bit too. I entered a couple of tournaments when I was over there. That was just an experience. I think the one that I entered, I think they thought it was a joke. Like, you know, there's like, oh, this, you know, American, you know, guy entered, tourist or whatever, entered into the tournament. And then I started winning matches because I wrestled. It was when I was in college wrestling. So it was a summer. And I started winning a matches. It's all professional there. They give you cheese to hand out to like the fans, and then they give you like
throwing
money
flowers on you and stuff.
Yeah, it was cool. And then so I won some matches, and that was I think they were shocked. The fans at first, they thought it was a joke, and then they were like cheering and stuff.
That's really cool. Was that through like a travel abroad at college?
No, that was
just on your own.
That was just something I found and you know, kind of organized and went over. We were it was back when, this was like, I think 2001 was the first time I went over there. Okay. And they they had to, you know, team up with some of the archaeologists and help out there with some of the digs and kind of wander around. I did that for, you know, 2 months, one summer. And
That'd be really cool.
it was neat. Yeah. And then I got to, you know, wrestle with them some, practice with their national team a little bit and wrestle around a little bit with them. So
it's, I was involved in, it's funny because we were talking about like getting involved in history, and for as long as I can remember, I've always been curious about the past and where I've come from, and just like, where's that building? What was here before it was a furniture store? And I think where I grew up in Bradford, there was a lot of that because the town was really booming in the 1800s. And when I was growing up, it was probably more like on the downside of what that was. It definitely was. It was on the downside. And so there was a lot of history that I could explore. But in 6th grade, we did a project, and I laugh now because they picked like 15 kids, and I didn't go to class the rest of the year. This was like a third of the way through my 6th grade year. We sat in the teacher's conference room in the lounge, and we researched the Civil War. And
oh, that's amazing. That sounds like your school was really cool.
I know. Well, dude, you know, like for years after that, even into high school, we always, like, the couple of us that were involved joked and were like, our school district is a joke. They didn't make us do anything. Like, we basically didn't go to school for 6th grade. But as I've gotten older, that's quite honestly the year that I feel like I benefited the most out of my schooling. And it was probably just perspective. What I thought school was then, that wasn't as important. But we did everything from, we went to the local cemetery where they had actually exhumed bodies and moved them to this new cemetery. And a lot of the gravestones and the headstones were deteriorating. So we went and took like transfer paper and charcoal, and we scanned all the fronts, and then we went and researched every one of those people. And we put together like a fairly cheaply published book. I think I still have a copy. If I do, I'll find one and I'll get you a copy.
Oh, that would be cool.
It was really
neat.
Did
you like, you put together their lives, like you kind of researched the individuals that you found? That's
Yep. Yeah. I mean, we did everything from genealogical sites. We went to the Landmark Society and just researched as many of them as we could to understand their backgrounds. And then, you know, through the time we were just doing other ancillary little projects. We had like Civil War hats made because at the end of all of this, there was a reenactment that we did at the middle school football field. And I got to be involved in the reenactment because I was part of this Civil War project. And so like I dressed up, I had like suspenders on. I like looked like this little, I think I was a Union soldier, but like had a tent pitched out on the football field, and they were out there shooting. And I mean, I can't think of a time where I got so much enrichment on history, and it drove me in the direction of, wow, you can dig into things, and something that might seem cool has a even cooler backstory if you just go and look, you know?
Yeah. Well, I another one of my ancestors, this is how close really that is to us. I think we don't realize that, but my great-grandfather, when I was young, was still alive, and he would talk to me about his grandfather, because I was interested in that when I was a kid, history and stuff. And his grandfather was fought in the Civil War, and he had gotten wounded with a sword. It was not very long ago, secondhand. You know, I'm still he got his shoulder cut with a sword, and it severed the nerves, and they couldn't repair it, and he couldn't use his arm. So he'd tell me he'd hold a whistle he'd carve them things out of wood, like whistles and like little things, but he would hold it between his knees because his one arm didn't work and whittle.
Oh, wow.
And that's how close it is. You know, I knew somebody that knew somebody that was in the Civil War. So it's not that far away. I was one of the reasons that when I first tried you guys' coffee, I was before I even knew you.
I know, it was so weird. You're like, oh, I've already bought it. I've already tried it.
Man,
I saw you tagged in one of Donner's posts, and I'm just like, oh, check this out. And it was like so crazy. I'm like, wait a second. He doesn't know who. And then you didn't even realize I was from Pittsburgh too until just a little bit.
I just love the coffee, and that's kind of like a historical. I went to Guatemala near where you guys I think sourced some of the beans. It was one of the best coffees I had then. And I think when I was reading about it, that's what I was like, oh, you guys sourced it there. one of the best cups of coffee I ever had when I was there. I was in, you know, like we went to Atitlan and like all the history there, you know, the crazy Native, the Native Americans fighting like Pedro de Alvarado and stuff like that. And I was exploring around there, kind of, you know, visiting the different communities around Lake Atitlan and drinking coffee. And then I found you guys that were sourcing from the highlands of Guatemala. And I was like, wow, I got to try it because it was great coffee then. And so I tried it and I've been ordering it ever since. I get a couple every month.
No, right on, dude.
My favorite is I'm partial to light roast. I like a lighter roast. So I do the medium and the light roast. I get a bag actually I drank, I was a little tired this morning. I drank 3 cups already this morning. So.
Excellent, man. No, I'm glad you enjoy it. We're, you know, my co-founder, I guess he was the founder of Action Coffee. We're in the process of rebranding right now to encompass a couple of other products, but he fell in love with it, the process, and really became like a coffee nut. Went down to Guatemala, found the farm, built a relationship, and then really wanted to make sure that when he brought it back to the States that he roasted it in a way that would kind of keep it consistent with their process. So small batch roasting it in Austin was kind of the way that he went about it. And our goal is to just continue to try to build on that, keep the history, because especially with coffee, I mean, there's so much competition out there, and I'm glad that it tastes great. But at the end of the day, I think for us, I'm glad to know that the story resonated because it's important to us as well. So.
Well, and you can see it actually in the coffee that you guys, I'm a little bit of a coffee. I've visited farms and seen them dried too. I'm like a connoisseur. I love coffee, but I could see how when the beans came, I could see that they were roasted with that process, right? Like they weren't, you get, well, my wife's from Costa Rica. So in one of her somebody in her family sells to Starbucks, one of the farms that sells. And honestly, I don't like that coffee because I don't know if it's the way they process it and roast it. And I can see the difference in your beans. They look like the traditional drying and roasting processes that I've seen there in Costa Rica, some of the small family farms. So I looked at that right away, and I could see in the beans and, you know, smell it. But you could just see how the bean selection, they're not oily when you get them. They don't have extra sugar roasted into them. It's just like pure coffee beans, and I dig it. It's one of my favorites. We have good coffee here in Pittsburgh too, but that one's the one I go. That's my morning go-to. You know, I get some of the other ones in Pittsburgh when I'm out and about, but that's my go-to now. So
excellent, man. We'll make sure that you're always stocked up. We appreciate your support.
Yeah, and so that was, you know, one of the histories that I really think is cool is how much the history of Brazil is kind of like bound up in the Gracie family, and you could write, you know, like like the novels, those multi-generation, like 100 Years of Solitude or something, about the Gracie family, and it would be crazier than those fiction about how they're tied in with the history of some of the things. And for example, I think a lot of people don't know this, but acai was popularized by Carlos, the original guy, one of the 2 brothers that started jiu-jitsu.
Really?
He was a nutritionist. Yeah. So and he thought it was one of these nutrition things and then he was, you know, they were well known back then, and he started popularizing it in Rio. And then, you know, there's acai everywhere now. But I remember when I was down there, when we first went down, I went to the Loft, and that was the hangout. That was like the back in, you know, early 2000s, late 90s. That's where all the jiu-jitsu people went, and you could just get out there any given day and see a bunch of jiu-jitsu guys hanging out. Like now, you know, the old school famous guys. But I tasted it, and I was like, this stuff's amazing, you know, like, and that was like the year after Sambazon had done the same thing. They had gone down there and tasted it, and wow, they were like, oh, this is amazing. And then they started a company, and I was glad that they came to the US then, because now we can get it everywhere, you know?
Yeah.
So,
how did you, so I know you wrestled in your whole life growing up. You wrestled collegiately at Lehigh, correct?
Yep. Yeah. Lehigh University.
Amazing university for wrestling.
Yeah. A lot of history there too. Yeah. Wrestling history, you know, they have about like 110 years of wrestling there.
Yeah. That's what I thought. So going from collegiate wrestling, how do you then link up with like the most prolific family in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
So it was by luck. And Hollis Gracie at the time put a post out on, it was the Ad Combat, the ADCC forum, that he wanted wrestlers to come down and help him. So my friend, still my best friend, we've, still see each other. He's in California. He's one of the top finance guys in the world, actually, as well. Now he was the manager, one of the top, I think it was the top bond fund. He was the lead manager for like the last 3 years in the world, best performing one. But he kind of went into that world, but him and I went. He saw this post that Hollis had made on the forum, and he had done a little bit of training with Cesar Gracie out in California in the '90s, and while he was in high school. So he wrote him, and he said, "Hey, we should check this out. We should go to Brazil." So we wrote to Hollis, and he picked us because of the connection with Cesar, is what he said. So Cesar's mom got us visas to Brazil. She was like working for the consulate or something, and one day after he graduated, 2 days after I graduated, we were flying down to Brazil and hoping Hollis would pick us up in Cuiabá. He lived in Cuiabá, this other city at the time, and we just showed up there, and Hollis started teaching us jiu-jitsu, and we started wrestling with him, and I think I'm so thankful that I got with a good teacher to begin with, like Hollis. I mean, we're still friends, and he comes to Pittsburgh a lot and stuff like that. But he's actually become, he has a great wrestling coach out in New York now, an Iranian guy, a guy from Iran. And he's probably considered the best wrestler in the Gracie family of, straight wrestling right now. He's competed at some international wrestling tournaments and done pretty well. So I'm proud that I was his first wrestling influence, just like he was my first jiu-jitsu. So I got a great start.
Well, that's awesome.
In jiu-jitsu.
Were you familiar with jiu-jitsu prior to that trip at all? Or were you just like, hey, I'm going to go down there and wrestle these guys, and had no thought of this turning into like a new journey?
I really had no thought. It was just one of those things where, we both thought we had, he had a job lined up on a New York Stock Exchange, and I was going to go work there as well. And we were just kind of out of school. We're like, hey, let's try this. This sounds really cool. We were both interested in it. I'd never done jiu-jitsu before that. But I just was like, wow, it just seems like an adventure, I'd read, I made a journal while I was there, and I went back, and that's how I started kind of traveling in Central America. I went back to my journal a couple years later and read, and I was like, wow, that was a great adventure. Just, beyond picking up a jiu-jitsu passion I love still, it was just a good adventure. So I was like, oh, I need to do that again, while I can. So that was kind of reading my, just kind of leafing through my old journal was the impetus for, when I left New York and went to Costa Rica. So and started jiu-jitsu there and stuff like that. So that was, that's what motivated me.
Was it difficult being two white guys from America down in Brazil, or were you embraced kind of? We were really embraced
because we were with Hollis. I mean, it was we lived with him and went everywhere with him and his family too. Like Gregor Gracie, who's now, great. I think he has a match coming up soon. Yep. He was living with us also. He was, I think, only 15 at the time, but so I'm still good friends with him. But yeah, we were really embraced, and it was a wild time. It was when Brazil won the World Cup. So we ended up driving to Rio, where Hollis's mom lived, and just the drive was a crazy adventure. We ran into there was a massive protest. Native Americans had blocked the road off, like in the interior going in. So we got stuck on the roadside for like a day and a half with this block and this protest. And just this line of cars going for miles, and we started kind of like partying with the other cars because we were there for so long. So that was our trip to Rio, and then when we got to Rio, it was the World Cup was going on. Brazil ended up winning. Wow. And Hollis's mom would drop us off at all the World Cup parties and just like take it, we just rage for the whole night, going on till the morning, and then get back and train a little bit and stuff like that.
Awesome. So
it was just one of those things that you could never. I have a good podcast out. Daniel Gracie talks about this a little bit too, how, it's different in Brazil now and some good ways, but also some, it's not the same like Baja, where Gracie Baja came and where they kind of, Henzo and Carlinhos and Daniel started Gracie Baja. Baja is a cool town now. It's fun. I visited, but it's not the same as what it was. It was a little beach town, like dirt roads back then. It was the next hip spot. So that's why they moved there. And I one of our podcasts, Daniel talks about that a lot, about the history of that.
I'll have to
so
check that out.
Yeah, if you guys, it's a short one. It's I did it from we were in Costa Rica for the camp, and he was talking about how that beach town in Costa Rica reminded him of Baja in the early days. So that was that. So that our camp, I just got out of Costa Rica for our training camp that I do down there every year, right when COVID, was starting to hit, and my family got stuck down there for 4 months, and I got out just in time. I got back here just in time, which was good. But
Wow.
It's kind of weird not seeing my family for that long. But we're doing the next camp, and if anybody's interested, we're planning, hopefully, depending on everything that's going on. But we're going to do 2 weeks of camps in Costa Rica in January. So it's Pura Vida Jiu Jitsu camps. Check that out if you get a chance. It's a blast. I do it small group camp. We'll have Daniel Gracie, Sean Williams, me, some other local Costa Ricans sometimes show up. And Gary Tonin was there. I might see if he can come. If he's fighting. He did 1 year there. Really good friend of mine, but it's tough with him now because he's with ONE FC, and they
is he over in Singapore a lot, or is he?
It's just they don't know exactly when he's going to fight. So if he gets called for an event or something, it's tough because he's contractually obligated, and then we have to.
If he can't get out of Central America,
it's one of those things where I have trouble scheduling him since he signed with ONE FC, but we had Daniel Gracie's been there every time. Sean Williams has been there for I think 4 out of the 5 camps I think that we've done.
Sean,
and
not to interrupt you, did Sean used to train with GSP?
Yes, he did. He was one of his.
That's where I know that name from. He was a wrestling coach or a grappling coach for him.
He was a jiu-jitsu coach. Sean's he's been called like the teacher's teacher. He was my main teacher for jiu-jitsu, actually. Okay. He was one of the teachers at Henzo, New York, and then he went out to LA and kind of started his own thing. He's a commentator for Flow. He's the main the head commentator now. But Sean's he's just such a knowledgeable teacher. He came up with John Danaher, and John was one of my teachers too in New York early when Sean and him were brown. I met them when they were brown belts, and they those two guys are kind of took different paths and stuff like that, and have a different teaching style. But really, in my opinion, like the best teachers out there, as far as breadth of knowledge, creativity, and John particularly, like investing in his students and stuff. And like Sean's done a lot of different things. He has a clothing company called Carbine now. It's really cool. Like if you guys are anybody's interested in jiu-jitsu gear. He has some instructionals out, and he's going to keep doing that, which take advantage of that because they're like, if you've seen John's instructionals, best-selling instructionals of all time, Sean's, you'll like Sean's if you like John's. So he's coming out with more and more now. So
I'll definitely check those out. Now, when you go down to this camp in Central America, is this something that you take all belt levels, or do you kind of have like a certain threshold in which you want to make sure people are at a skill level to make the trip down there? Or how's that work?
No, but that said, I mean, we take anybody. But that said, I think that we've had the lowest experience was like a 9-month, 10-month white belt. And that was, most of the people are like blue, purple, brown, black, that participate in the camp. But it's really for anybody. That's what's cool about it. It's a small group, so you can kind of tailor it to the instructors. Usually right at the beginning, we go around and ask what people want to work on and what their goals are for the camp and things like that. Because that's the difference. I mean, I love also there's big camps that are really cool, like Gracie Adventure Camp. That's a great experience. I went last year to Miami, and that was really cool. I got to roll with Hodger Gracie some, and just full on live rolling with him, learn from him. Some of the Hollis was there, some of my friends were there, but it's a little bit different experience because it's a big group, and there's good and bad to that, right? You get to meet a lot of different people, but our camp is like a private lesson basically, because there's 4 instructors and 16 people on the mat. That's what I limit it to. So, and then we go around and do things together, like hikes. It gets too cumbersome with a big group to do that kind of stuff, and we do like real local stuff that you wouldn't get to, because I lived down there for a long time. So I kind of know the area better than even honestly better than some of the locals, just because my family's been going there for 70 years, and I've been there for 17 now or something like that, going back and forth.
How long are you down there for these camps?
I usually stay for a month, but we're having 2 weeks of camp this time. Okay. So, and I try to go back twice a year there, just because family. It's like a place that's really, really I guess just dear to my heart as far as like a culture and stuff. So.
No, it sounds really interesting. You've actually got me kind of turning some gears in my head and wanting to be more consistent and get myself back on the mats. It was a couple of years since I had rolled, and then I actually came back. I did some classes in Cranberry, and I've dealt with an issue in between C4 and C3, and
That's
just
what you said, yeah.
I can't keep my neck healthy. And you know, I don't blame jiu-jitsu. I got to devote more time just to being healthy, because it shouldn't be something that keeps me from putting the time in. It's just one of those things that with all my other priorities, I haven't forced myself to get through that. But I think some changes recently for me doing this more full time and getting out of corporate America. I mean, I was spending 50 or 60 hours a week doing a day job, trying to then also, you know, help run a coffee and supplement company, and then launching a podcast. And so this whole upheaval in life has put a lot of things in perspective for me. So jiu-jitsu is at the top of the list to kind of get back. And you've really, aside from just the physical aspects and, you know, the knowledge of being able to defend yourself, the culture that comes along with that, and even something like a trip to South America, Central America, there's so much incremental value just in that makes me want to get back engaged in that. So I'm sure.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to think about it. It's a life, like it's kind of cliche, but it's like it's a lifestyle too. You know, as far as like traveling, meeting people from other places. You know, that to me, that's the idea of like jiu-jitsu lifestyle. So I think if you can get back into it, have you tried that iron neck? I was thinking of.
Man, you know, I literally talked about this I was in my bathroom doing the motions because I saw that video pop up on my Facebook feed the other day. I think it was maybe Rogan, like in the back room with the creator. I need to do something, because I don't know if it's just from, you know, a lot of people listening to this might have the same thing, like sitting at a desk for 10 years and head down, I think just put issues. I went and saw Dr. Joe. You know Dr. Joe? He's a Pittsburgh-based guy. He's Korean. His dad invented this really interesting neck surgery where instead of replacing the disc, he would go in and like trim around the disc wherever it's bulging out. Talk to them, and just, you know, they're like, you're at a point where we could fuse your spine, but you're young and you don't want to do that yet. He basically told me to grow a set and be a man. But it's, you know, I don't treat my neck the right. It's, you know, I should treat it better. It sounds stupid to say that, but I don't treat it the way that I probably should.
Yeah. Well, I think another guy you might want to look into is Isaac Greeley. He's a black belt that trains with us. I was training with him yesterday. He has 7 rehab chiropractic, and he knows a lot about jiu-jitsu. I'll hook you up with that later, but he's a great guy that you maybe could go see about, you know, about that, just to get another perspective. That's because, you know, we all deal with injuries in you know, in jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. I think that one of the things you guys sent me some of the turmeric, the supplements of turmeric, and and that's a big for me. CBD and turmeric, that's the combination that you guys have in those things. That's perfect. Like, I don't take Advil at all, and I get injured. You know, I have injuries and things like that. And I've gone strictly to like turmeric. And when I got that, I was like, perfect. That's a perfect nighttime one, because, you know, you take the CBD and the turmeric, both are anti-inflammatory. My brother's doing some research on he's a neuroscientist out of NIT. He runs a lab out there, and he's doing some research on CBD. He did a study for athletes. He, you know, surveyed all these athletes, you know, some famous UFC guys, some like us, we contributed to it, our team, but mostly based on anti-inflammatory responses to head injuries is what he's researching. And there's some good indication for CBD for that particular.
So like concussion-based type.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh,
yeah. Wow. So I always carry it in the gym here in case, you know, we try to avoid that in training. Like we have some great MMA fighters, like Jesse Delgado, 2-time national champs. He's been training with us. As soon as we got him approved, he's going to fight in regional shows on Fight Pass, CFFC. And then our 125-pound, look out for this. If you guys are fans of MMA, we have AJ Wilkins, Jesse Delgado, and then an older guy, but really skilled. He's on a 3-finish streak. These guys all train together. And, you know, Jonas he's older. He's the one that's older from the Philippines. Just a really dangerous guy. He's probably, you know, he'll probably fight in CFFC too, but on the older side of his career. But the other two, Jesse and AJ, look for them. They're gonna. We have Bob Meese, who's Cody Garbrandt's. Cody comes and works with us sometimes, and but Bob works with them at least once a week, usually twice a week, with that group in particular, because he believes the same as me. He thinks they're going to make a run at the title, one or both of those guys,
Awesome.
And they're all training together. So it's really nice to have that lightweight group.
AJ's got an older brother, right? That
Mike Wilkins.
Mike.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was a really good fighter. He's now just mostly competing in grappling. He had a good pro career, and he fought in Bellator, CFFC, but he, you know, he doesn't talk about this a lot, but he had some head injuries also. Mostly one of them didn't have anything to do with jiu-jitsu or fighting, but he had some in training. One of them actually was in grappling. It was a real weird scenario that happened, but I think that was one of the reasons why he stopped fighting. But yeah, he's one of the best Pittsburgh local colorful guys, but he's still competing in grappling like we have our show at the Ace Hotel that we do in conjunction with Ace, so we had to cancel this year, but Mike was the main event at that, and that was fun. It's like this old school gym where we pack everybody, you know, almost right up to the mat edge and shine a light down on the mat, you know, and then we have pro grappling matches there, and Ace Hotels, like, they like us to do it. It's part of their, you know, physical culture program or whatever. So they it's just the event it gives that feel of like if you ever see those old pictures of boxing matches where everybody's just packed in, like, right around the edge and screaming and stuff. And that's what we did that with jiu-jitsu. So
do you enjoy promoting fights and doing all of that? Or, I mean, what kind of pain in the ass is that?
It is a pain in the ass, like, but and you can't like overestimate how much of a pain in the ass it's going to be. It's particularly, and I'll say this, like, nothing, you know, I love MMA as a sport. I fought a little bit, and I think it's great, and I'm a big fan. We train MMA fighters, but promoting MMA is the worst. Like, we do a Muay Thai show, and we do that pro grappling show every year. And the pro grappling for me is the most fun, and just everybody's real agreeable, and it's more of a fun environment. And then the Muay Thai is fun. It's an all amateur show. But then the MMA event is a little trickier to put together. Some of the egos and personalities and things. And, you know, just putting fights together is a little bit more difficult. So I
had one amateur fight in 2011. I fought the OFC, if you're familiar with the OFC, out of Columbus, Ohio. Yeah. And it was just it would put such a bad taste in my mouth for smaller, just some of the things that occurred.
So you fought in 2011. What was your main background when you got into the fight? Were you MMA, or were you striking, grappling? What was your kind of main?
Yeah, man. So you're going to shake your head at this. So I fought out of a place called the Knockout Factory. It was Seneca Nation of Indians in Salamanca, New York. So right over the New York state line. And I played collegiate baseball at Pitt Bradford. And then I got into powerlifting. And I graduated high school, I was like 150 pounds. I was small. And by the time I got done with baseball, I was like 220. I had put on a lot of weight, got really heavy into lifting. And while I was lifting, I started to go over to this gym as a way to just get extra body weight workout in cardio. And I started doing some boxing, and then it led into, hey, we need a sparring partner for this guy who's got a fight coming up. And so I started like giving him rounds, and then they sucked me in slowly and slowly. And after like 4 months of training there, they were like, hey, there's a show coming up in Ohio if you want to try this. And I was really just like a dirty boxer. They were like, grab a hold of him, try to take him down, and just throw elbows, do whatever you can, just be a bruiser. And there wasn't a whole lot of like, hey, here's jiu-jitsu class or learn the fundamentals. I had a good coach. He understood striking really well, but I just didn't have the experience. And they had me go over, and actually a week and a half before the fight, my opponent failed his hepatitis test. And they're like,
that's rampant in amateur MMA. Like, they'll pull out. It's so frustrating, right? Like,
and it was 185, and I had cut down. I think I started my cut at like 215, and I like shed all this weight, and I was selling alarm systems door to door in the summertime, and I had to leave. I was getting ready to leave, and I'm like, I trained so hard. I want to fight. Like, this sucks. And I asked him, I'm like, is there anything you can do? And the commission came back, it was the promotion came back with a guy. They're like, he was a 205er. He's off of 2 losses straight. They're making him drop weight. He's going to fight 185. Do you want to take it? I'm like, give it to me. Well, I didn't know this. The kid was a wrestler from University of Ohio.
Oh, wow. So
Ohio.
He was good wrestler. Yeah.
And he took me down within like the first minute of the fight. I actually, like, I rewatch it. It's like the worst form, but I just brute forced him, reversed it, got on top. I landed a couple really good ground and pound shots. And then we wound up going over to the fence, and I just made some stupid mistakes and put his arm in a position to put me in a rear naked. And he got me across the front of my face. And when he was squeezing, I just heard a huge pop, and my jaw dislocated out of the socket. And the doctor came in, and my mom was in the front row. And I remember the kid like let go of me when he felt it. And I kind of like grabbed my face, and everybody in the crowd, to your point, it was like jam packed in this nightclub. There's like 500 people like up on the cage, and it just like everything stopped and everybody got quiet. And I turned around and it looked like I had a golf ball on the side of my face, and my mom started screaming. And then it just ensued. Like, they drove me to a hospital in Columbus. And I remember the lady's like, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your pain right now? Like, ma'am, I don't know. Just help me out. And I'll never forget, my wife made me a pineapple upside down cake because I was struggling to get to 185, man. It was tough. Yeah. And not anything like a professional fighter, but how I was trying to lose this weight, it wasn't good. And I woke up the next morning and I couldn't open my mouth because of how sore it was. And I just remember she like scraped this cake into the garbage and was like, yep, I guess you're not having the cake today. It was so disappointing. But yeah, I mean, it was, as much as I sit here, it doesn't sound like I enjoyed it. It was some of the best time that I had, the camaraderie, the people that I met. And yeah,
well, also just the experience of like walking into that cage and knowing like that's something that a lot of people don't ever get to experience that. And it's even a little different than competing in grappling, in my opinion. Sometimes I get more nervous actually than I got in MMA competing in grappling because I don't know, maybe the level was higher in my case or whatever, but like, it's still a different feeling, right? Like to see me, stepping in that cage, it's something that it's worth it just to have that feeling, I think.
It's changed my perspective on anything difficult that I've ever had to do in life, because if you recognize that, you can channel that into other things. When I've had hard, and it's like, this is nothing. I literally walked in there and they locked that door behind me. What is this? This is a phone call, or this is a job interview, or this is a hard conversation with my wife, or, what I mean? It puts real world problems into perspective for you.
Yeah. I think just all like training jiu-jitsu, for example, or, anything like that. It's a constant, not exactly what you're talking about, but another thing like mentally like that. It's a constant exercise in risk management, right? In a lab, it's like a lab for risk management. Like you go in, I got to take a little bit of risk. I got to open up, and maybe I got my guard passed in, so the consequences usually aren't that bad, although you have to protect your body and stuff. Mm-hmm. But it's still that risk. Like you're like, and the only penalty really is like your ego, like the guy, he caught me in an armbar because I overextended myself, so, but that's just, it's every day we exercise this, like, kind of a risk management idea. And I think that's really lacking in a lot of other areas in the world right now. Like that's something I, like see is people don't have a good handle either way on like risk management. I'm like, well, maybe you should train jiu-jitsu because that'll give you that constant, it's a constant exercise with lower stakes than some of the things you do in real life. But you're exercising that risk. I'm going to take a risk. This is what it's, and maybe it's going to turn out not right, and you assess that, right? And it's dependent on your personality. Everybody has different risk tolerances. Even in jiu-jitsu, you see that. Like you get guys that roll that are very, very defensive, and that's their main focus. You see guys like Gary Tannen, we mentioned him. I mean, that guy doesn't have any.
He just lays down and is like, "Come on in, come into my guard. I dare you."
Yeah, he just goes for it, whatever. And that's partly your innate personality, I think. But I think you do build a different, through training, through that constant feedback of risk management, and that definitely translates into other things. Some of my finance people that, because when I went to Lehigh, I know a lot of people in finance. they agree with that too. Some of my good friends is that it helps them. A lot of them that are in jiu-jitsu also. It's that risk management that kind of can transfer over a little bit, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh, most definitely. It's funny because people, I think, put a stigma on martial artists as well as, you know, just jiu-jitsu being a martial art, that those people are maybe kind of tough guys or bullies or have egos, but it's, from everything that I've ever experienced, it's the complete opposite. And it's probably due to the amount of confidence that everybody has in themselves, their abilities, where they're not constantly on guard and ready to attack because they're unconfident on just life in general.
Yeah. And the risk part of it too, I think that they're comfortable with their own risk management, whatever that is for them, you know? And I think that's from training, you know, you're comfortable with whatever risk you're taking in life, like traveling to a new place or whatever, or not having a plan necessarily for everything. Like, yeah, I'm going to go into a jiu-jitsu match. Maybe I have a plan, but it's, you're managing that risk in the match or in the training. And I think that's one of the things that most carries over. I wrote about that recently. Just you know, there's all these different opinions going around about people training and, you know, right now. And I'm not really political with that kind of stuff, but I just think that I talked to an emergency room doctor, and he's like, I think sometimes young people are underestimating the risk, older people are overestimating the risk,
True.
The opposite. I meant young people are underestimating the risk of, you know, contracting COVID or getting, or the risk from it. And older people are maybe underestimating. One of my friends here in Pittsburgh, he's you know, kind of, you know, paraphrasing him, but he thought there's something like that going on, you know, and I think that. I think it's just risk management. You know, it's not about telling everybody what else they should do and things like that. And I'm not, you know, on social media saying, you know, everybody's wimpy if they don't do this, or everybody's stupid. And, you know, if they don't do this, I think it's about risk management, you know, and that's that you train that through jiu-jitsu, you know.
Such a good point. Such a good point.
You mentioned high rollers. Which one did you go to? Which one did you get to see?
I was at Bridge City here in Pittsburgh.
And that was a great high rollers event because we had just world-class guys there. That ended up, Nicky Rod was in it. Funny story. There was a guy there. This is kind of just humorous. So you know how he's built, just like he's just shredded. He looks like a statue or something. So he takes his sweatshirt off, and I saw one of his prospective opponents looking at him, and they were staring at him. And then the guy went over to the bracket and looked at the bracket, and he said, and then he just left, and we were calling his name. He just saw Nicky taking his shirt off, and he was like, I'm out.
It's like something out of a movie.
Yeah, it was,
great.
And we had some other great matches, like, you know, DJ Jack, my little brother, actually, Logan, beat DJ, which was a great win for him. He had a little weight on DJ and stuff, but it was just still, you know, beat a world champ like that. It was a great thing for you. Logan's real young. He doesn't look like it, but he's 26, I think. So he's my little brother, but a lot younger than me, 15 years younger than me. So
how many of there are there all boys?
Yeah, I have three full brothers, full sister, and then half brother.
Okay, I have
three Pennsylvania.
Three younger brothers myself. So.
Oh yeah, so you guys probably so you were the oldest. I was the oldest also.
Yeah,
so.
I was the oldest of four boys, and then there's 12 grandkids, and 10 of them are boys, and I was the oldest of all the grandkids as well. So.
Same with me. I was always.
We used to I remember we bought the Hulk hands. I was always the promoter. I would be like, all right, we're gonna do this fight and we'll set up this bracket, and then I'd get 2 buys, and I'd be in the championship already, and I'd fight after they all beat the piss out of each other. Then I would get in there and clean up. But yeah.
So if you're a fan of high rollers, if you do you use cannabis also?
I do. Yeah. I actually I spent a couple years in the cannabis industry. I own an event services company in Los Angeles that provides it was event services, and was actually talking with Lonnie about a couple of things a while back. And then COVID's kind of put a little bit of a damper on events, but certainly follow all of that. Yeah,
Lonnie was, I just really liked that he did it. He told me a long time ago he was going to do the high rollers. And I said, well, if you ever do it, I'll help you. Just thinking because everybody says they're going to do stuff. And then, I didn't know, but he did it. He actually just made it happen. And I was like, okay, I'm in. Whatever you need me for, I'll promote it. I'll rep, so I help with the rules a little bit and referee, and we kind of make up the rules, the weight classes. That's kind of like my role, and then promote some of the events. And I like in LA and Pittsburgh, place where I'm, have people that I can promote it to. But it's been I think it's been a real positive thing, just that in general. And I'm not a big, I mostly, when I use cannabis, I don't really talk about it a whole lot actually, but I'm mostly edibles for me has always been a thing for years and years. And I'm not saying I'd never, smoke once in a while with friends socially, but for me, it's mostly the edibles. I use it for, sleep, recovery, stuff like that. So
no, that's one of those things, right? I'm a huge cannabis advocate. I think it just from a personal freedoms perspective, let alone the science behind it. And I think there's a lot of science that we've been misled on that, is a whole nother podcast you could get into. Right. But I've always smoked it. And I had a friend who's in the medical field who's like, look, I'm not going to tell you what to do. There's nothing wrong with cannabis, but the fact that you're smoking it, that's where the problem is. He's like, it's not the cannabis, it's the fact you're breathing in smoke of any kind. So tried to be a little bit more aware of that and change how I consume. And thankfully in the state of Pennsylvania, there is a medical, program, which I've been able to be a part of. I don't know.
That's cool.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but which has made that easier to, go and find edibles that jive with me. But before it's just like, it is what it is. And I'll deal with the consequences in order to have a free mind. So.
That's yeah, I'm in total agreement with that. And I think I just see, that's been eroding, it seems like to me, just the freedom to do what you want, in that way, especially with your own mind and body. Another thing I'm a fan of is psychedelics, things like that. I've always kind of explored that for years and years. And I know it's kind of getting popular now and stuff. quite a few years ago, I went to Colombia and had a really good experience there with, because it's legal there. It's ayahuasca.
I was going to ask you.
It was about a couple hours outside of Bogota. We hiked up into the mountains. I was actually with Gabor Mate, the guy that he writes and speaks a lot. He's a famous doctor he's an author, but we went. He runs retreats himself. He went on this one. We just hiked up. He's really amazing. He was able to make it, but we were up there in the mountains with it was Colombian natives from Colombia, and they call it yahe there, and we did it. We were there for 12 days, I think, or something, and did a lot of stuff with them. So that was the best experience I ever had with that. But I definitely encourage that. It's not for the faint of heart, or if you don't want to take kind of a mental risk, I guess. But it was I found it powerful. I've only done it a couple times since then, and it's not something you want to do a lot, but I think it's valuable as an experience to just get a different perspective on your own mind. Like we talked about looking at yourself from an outside perspective. That's one of the experiences I've had. You kind of see yourself completely removed from your whatever you consider to be yourself. You get that. It's hard to kind of explain it.
They say it dissolves your ego, and it's probably like an overstated phrase when it comes to psychedelics, but I don't know of a better explanation of what occurs.
Yeah. When I had one of the experiences I had there in Colombia is I kind of, for lack of a better description, I kind of saw my ego as a separate thing from myself. That's what I saw. And I was looking at, it was like, not exactly, but I was looking at that, whatever that ego is, that ball of construct or whatever it is. And I was like, I was outside of that. And I was looking at it. So I was like, it's a weird feeling because you think you're always so associated with you or whatever and then you kind of get like something pulls away and there's something else that you kind of feel as you too looking at that. That's one of the weird experiences I've had. It reminded me when you said about the NFL player and that was something I thought was valuable from that experience.
Well, and psychedelic, I mean, there's a big trend in microdosing in the jiu-jitsu world. It seems like, I don't know how prevalent that's always been, but whether maybe it's just kind of the liberal nature of the world that we're living in, people are more free to talk about stuff like that. But to me, it makes a total amount of sense. I've never tried ayahuasca or DMT, but I've taken my fair share of mushrooms, and I can understand the being able to break things down and almost slow down reality and see things occurring as it occurs.
It gives you a different filter for the world. That's what I microdose or a little bit more. I've done that with training, tried it, and I don't do it often, but I have done, you know, stretches of that with psilocybin mushrooms, and it gives you like a different filter on everything. You know, you look out and you see, even your training, for example, like jiu-jitsu, you're on the mat, you process what's going on through a different lens maybe or something, you know, and that's, I think it's interesting. That's for me. And you get energy too from it, from microdosing. I feel a little bit of energy, a little boost, you know, but it's not something I like to do all the time. I like to, when I'm training, I kind of like to not have that different filter on, you know, but it's a good experience to have once in a while, I think, you know.
You probably almost get to that state without it. I mean, I would imagine you to understand an art form like jiu-jitsu as deeply as you need to understand it to get yourself to the black belt level and to be able to teach others. And that was the other thing before we hop, I did want to ask you as far as teaching, but just, I would imagine you have to almost be able to naturally slow things down to get to that place. And in practicing it, it's probably a lot like for me is music. I love playing the guitar. I'm very ADD. That's a big reason why I smoke cannabis, is to kind of like calm all that distraction from my mind and allow me to focus on things. And when I play a guitar, it like blocks all of that out. It requires me to pay a lot of attention to so many different details. It's a form of meditation for me.
The same with me. The focus of particularly when I'm doing it myself. Teaching is a little different. Teaching, I have to kind of take like what the NFL guy said. You almost have to, like, in a way, you have to get out of yourself when you're teaching more. And whereas it's the opposite, it kind of comes to the same thing, like a meditation. But when I'm practicing jiu-jitsu, there's nothing else. I'm doing it. I'm thinking about my internal feelings, how the pressure of your opponent, what pressure they're giving. You can kind of feel their mindset, their aggression. You're at the same time as you're processing that, you're performing strategies, you're looking about how to apply different technique, what techniques applying, and changing it in a moment. So it's really, you have to, I feel like I have to be totally focused when I'm practicing jiu-jitsu, and also keeping yourself safe. That's a big thing. Always protecting your body, especially as I get older. I'll be 42 this year. So it's, you know, I have to protect my body when I'm training, but teaching's even a different thing. You have to kind of step back and think of, you know, instead of what I think about this technique or whatever, because it's different, because I have a different experience. What's this person experiencing right now trying to learn this, you know? So that's, and then different age groups are different. You know, I love teaching kids. We had the first, you know, kids, dedicated kids jiu-jitsu program in the Pittsburgh area. And I still teach kids sometimes just because I really love it. I teach the advanced kids class. My son's in it, actually. He goes to class sometimes, but that's a different challenge, how to relate to kids, because they think a little bit different. You know, I think in all kids are different too, but the adults, it's like step by step. I feel like most adults learn, you mix visual and auditory, and it's step by step, very much like John Danaher does. I don't think that works as well with kids a lot of times. I think kids are more experiential. Like you say, you put them in a scenario and say, this is where you need to get to. You motivate them to get to that certain position, and then they kind of find the ways to it, you know, without, you know, instead of describing all the theory and stuff, where I think that's helpful to adults. I think kids are more like experiential and like they play around. They're like, oh, let me see if I can do this. And let me see if I usually, like with the advanced kids, I'll give them a goal, and I'll be like, this is why this goal is important. Because, for example, you want to be able to submit your training partners from this position, right? And and I'll put them in that position, like a micro position, and I'll say, get to that submission, however you can. And if you do, you win the game. You know, like that's, we do stuff like that with the adults too, but it's the explanation's different. That's the emphasis with the kids, is them finding the path, right? And that seems like to work better.
Do you feel like it's enhanced your ability as a practitioner of jiu-jitsu yourself in teaching other people and looking at it maybe from how they have to look at it as opposed to how you look at it every single day?
I think it does, and it doesn't. It's a two-way thing. I think the part that helps you is what you just said, is, you know, you have to really think through, you know, instead of just doing something kind of, you know, almost subconsciously, you have to, like, why do I do this? What's the most efficient way to do it? What's the most efficient way to explain to somebody else how to do it? Makes you think and articulate. Same as like writing down your thoughts, like a journal or something, you know, where you clarify, you have these thoughts that swirl around your head, but how do you clarify them? How do you communicate them? In the act of trying to communicate them to somebody else, you definitely understand your own better. I think that's the positive. There's a negative to teaching too, that I think that as far as making you skilled as a competitor. And I think this is something I've talked to other teachers about. The negative comes when, as a teacher, you have to be really broad. You have to paint the broad canvas with you have to know about everything. Like, for example, I'm not a big worm guard player. So Keenan Cornelius worm guard. I think it's interesting and I understand it, but it's not my thing. But I have to know that to teach. Whereas if I was a competitor, I wouldn't have to know anything about that. I just have to know how to stay out of the initial positions, and focus on what I'm doing.
Put that time into something else that you'd be
focusing on my game and just hammering that and imposing that, I think so I think sometimes teachers, you have to get scattered a lot. And another thing, this is something my teachers told me about when you're teaching, when I'm training with my students, a lot of times the lower level students, you have to kind of let them, get stuff, or you have a feeling that you want to let them move and let them do stuff. And that can be detrimental, because those times when you let them catch up to you, that would be the time that you get the advantage on somebody better or your level or better. And if you roll with your students that are very low level all the time with the wrong mentality with that, like, oh, I'm going to let them catch up, I'm going to let them get this position, that can be detrimental too. You have to be really focused. I love rolling with lower belts and training with lower belts. I think you can get a lot out of it, but I think that you have to be careful with that if you're also competing.
Because a lot of that's happening, you're just subconsciously, transitions are happening so quick that you're probably doing things before you even realize you're doing it. So by practicing those other, to your point, it could potentially put some of that into your subconscious thinking and put you at a detriment.
That's exactly what it is. And you really guard against that. Yeah. But on the other hand, one of my teachers, like I mentioned, Sean Williams before, he has a really good thing that he talks about drilling. He's like, well, if you're rolling, let's say I'm rolling with a blue belt or something, and he would say, well, you're drilling, you're in control, and it's drilling. It's not live. It might be live for them. They may be like going 100% live. Mm-hmm. So both people are benefiting, right? Like I'm getting a drill in, a non-scripted drilling scenario in, and it's fun, but I have to focus, it's the same focus. It's not like, oh, I'm rolling with somebody that's less skilled, so I have to be almost more focused in some ways, in a different kind of focus. So that's what teaching's great. I love it. And it's a challenge. It's like the new challenge for me. How do I get to be a better teacher? How do I impart this to people with different goals? Like, how do I teach a competitor? Like, I mentioned Jesse Delgado or AJ Wilkins or something. How do I teach them? How do I teach a casual practitioner that I also want to learn this stuff, or how do I teach a kid? It's all different challenges. And I love that part. That's something I'm getting more and more into as I, don't compete as much myself and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I think you must be hitting something right, because the growth that you guys are having with Stout here in Pittsburgh is tremendous. I see you guys just opened up another facility out in Monroeville. You're up at the facility in Zelienople. So
I hope you can come up and check out the one in Zelienople, even if you don't do, even if you can't do jiu-jitsu yet with your neck and stuff like that. Just come out and, say hi. We got a lot of stuff going on. You might be interested in some of the striking. We have Ariel Stokes class now for my wife does that. It's kind of seems like it's addicting in the way jiu-jitsu is for some people, for people that like that. Zeli's really nice. That space is cool. And we opened a big garage door now since the summer. And then a lot of us go down and we'll jump in the river nearby after, just cool off after late classes. It's still light at 8:30. We'll get down and jump in a river, a few of us after. But you should definitely come up and check that out if you get a chance.
I will most definitely. It's on the top of my list of things to do in the next 60 days is to get myself back into a consistent practice, even if it's just a couple of days, just for my own health and well-being. I think the other part, as I've gotten older, up until a couple of years ago, everything I did had that competitive mindset to it. And so for me, it got really frustrating with jiu-jitsu because I'd go for 2 or 3 weeks and then I'd get hurt. I just would re-injure that neck, and it made me mad because it's just I want to put all my time and focus into it, and I'd find myself give and take. And I appreciate the invite. Regardless of the neck, I'm going to pop up.
I was going to say, I'll do better as far as the offer, because I've done this with a lot of other people that have injuries and stuff. If you want, we'll connect after this, and we can, even just get a one-on-one, so make sure you don't get hurt. I rehab. One of my friends has a big ad agency up there, actually. Ronin Advertising. Shout out to them. They've been really helpful for me. But the founder, they're a nationwide ad agency. They have big, billion-dollar companies that they work with. But their main office is in Zealand. They had a Miami office and an LA office and stuff. But the founder of it hurt his shoulder, and he's an older guy. He's in his 50s, and he had a big shoulder surgery. So I was like, John, why don't we just, you and I train, make sure you don't get hurt. He recovered. He's now back full rolling with anybody he wants. But that was something I did. Like, that might be a good way to get started. Yeah. You and I can just get on the mats and, make sure you don't get hurt and get you back up to speed and get your body going. And
I would love
we could definitely do that sometime if you want to hook up that way.
I would definitely love that. And I'll take you up on it. To circle back, because I want to give you some of your day back in everything. I can talk for hours.
We have so much in common. I feel like we can just chat forever. The only schedule I have to go up, and I'm teaching up in Zealand. Actually, I'm in a strip right now. I'm in my strip district gym, but I'm going to teach up in Zealand here at noon. So I'll probably have to head up here pretty soon. But we should definitely do it again, because or just grab a coffee sometime somewhere and make some. Because I feel like we've had such like similar backgrounds, but never got to meet and connect so far. So.
Oh, without a doubt, man. I wanted to ask you, because I saw this, and I'll leave you with this to come full circle. You being a wrestling guy, I don't know how much you follow this. I don't get the impression you're much of a social media guy, other than just promoting what you're doing and sharing some interesting stuff.
Yeah.
But, there was one of the Paul brothers. I don't know if you know Jake and Logan Paul, the YouTube.
I know who they are. Yeah.
Well, I think it was whatever one isn't in trouble with the FBI right now, because I think the FBI raided one of their houses. But the other one put out a tweet and said $10,000 to any influencer that can beat me in a wrestling match. And Askren quickly popped in and was like, well, I'm an influencer. I'll pin you in less than a minute, bad hip and all.
He definitely would. That's the thing. Like, that's a different sport, wrestling. And Askren was amazing. He was the Wrestling Nationals was here last year. And, I saw him. I saw Ben, and we were like, "Oh, come down!" And he wanted to come down, and then we got a couple of the other high-level guys to come down, put him in gis. Like Andy Horvat was there, and Jake Herbert, some Olympians. They came down and threw the gis on, and we rolled around. That was during Nationals last year. That was great. I love that those guys are that open-minded, to do, because they're the best of the best at their sport and elite level, and then they want to, just try something new. And I think Jake and Andy are like, they train with the gi now some, like they get into it. So yeah, it's those guys. I think Ben would smash him, and I love international, particularly I follow college wrestling too, and have some friends in that. But shout out to Caleb Young, #1 ranked Iowa guy. He's grew up with him. He was ranked #1 last year. Unfortunately, didn't get to compete in nationals, but I love international wrestling. Follow that pretty much almost as much as I follow grappling. But it's exciting if you haven't gotten to watch some of it, and it's really beautiful because it brings people together. With all the division in the world. Like I think somebody put out a tweet that I saw, one of the wrestlers. They said, doesn't matter. It's different faith. It was a guy from India. He was a Muslim. And then there was a guy from the United States. They were wrestling. It's like different faith, different country, but we're all on the mats together, and they're showing them hugging. And that's been my experience. The truth. The
more of that we can show right now. I know it seems like so. You turn on the TV, turn on social media, and it's just like overwhelmed. Speaking of keeping distance between myself and the world, I've got to do a better job of that. It's like probably my biggest downside, but I get so passionate about it. To your point, man, I just want to see everybody getting along. And jiu-jitsu, even if it's on a small scale, if you're not familiar and you're listening to this, go Google what's a local jiu-jitsu gym. Find what's going on and go watch it. Go do some investigating and find out what's happening, because I'm looking forward to getting back in, because I think, I sit here and bitch about how I get caught up in the real world. This is probably the best thing that I could do to cleanse that for myself.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. I mean, the coffee is great, and it's fun being on the podcast. I think if you guys get a chance too, if you're interested in that perspective, Daniel Gracie, one of my other teachers, he put out just kind of a long thing it was really from the heart. It wasn't like tough guy. He was, when they were riding, they broke his school up in Philadelphia and stuff. And he was like, hey, you know, I'm here. I'm going to walk my dog. They told me to stay in. He's like, but I'm going to, you know, he's like, I'm just not going to live in fear. You know, and he's talking about some of the people like riding and stuff. And he said that, you know, I think how he said it was really cool. He's like, I'm going to tell you a little story. There was a bird and a squirrel. He couldn't say squirrel very well in English, but he was like, and the squirrel was fixing up. There was a leak in a dam, and he was fixing it. And the bird started laughing at him. He was like, well, why are you wasting your time? You can't fix this dam. And the squirrel looked up and he said, well, I'm doing my job. And that's what Daniel, he was like, that's what for me, I'm just going to teach jiu-jitsu. He's like, I can't solve all the problems in the world. I can't, you know, but, you know, I see everybody is equal on the mat. And he's like, I believe jiu-jitsu can change the world. It's a small part, but he's like, I'm going to go back after I walk my dog, and I'm going to go do my job, which is to, you know, teach jiu-jitsu. And what you said, everybody, you know, you come on the mat and are there with everybody, and they're everybody's truly accepting of no matter what your background is when you're there. And I think that's really a breath of fresh air to just have that feeling in, you know, with all the divisions and stuff now. So
it's good stuff, man. That's it's probably where we should leave it.
Yeah. And I hope we can do it again sometime. And thanks
doubt.
again for the care package for the coffee.
Certainly.
And like I said, I drank some this morning. It was great. And hopefully I'll see you. Just get in touch with me. I'll see you up in Zealy, and hopefully do another podcast. Hey, just to mention, I think if you would ever want to talk, my brother would be a great guy. Actually, I was gonna contact Rogan to see if he could get on his too. He's been interested. He's creating some VR MMA related stuff. He's a neuroscientist. Is his part, but he runs a lab where they do a lot of VR creation.
Yeah.
He was a jiu-jitsu guy. He boxed, and he was a nationally ranked wrestler at Cornell too. So he might be a fun guy to have on if you ever want to get him on.
Without a doubt. I'm going to send you, I'll send you an email later today just to kind of reconnect, and got a lot to catch up on, but I appreciate it a ton, man. And you got a great thing at, it's in social media. It's at Stout PGH. That's all our social media. Yeah. We're on, we're pretty active on Instagram. I don't go on Facebook a whole lot, but and then Twitter, we post a lot of news and events and stuff like that on Twitter that we're having. This weekend, we're having a seminar. If anybody's interested out there, jiu-jitsu people, Jesse Delgado, 2-time national champ, Division I wrestler. He's been training with us, grappling and MMA. He's going to do a takedown seminar, a defensive takedown seminar, this Saturday at 10 o'clock in the Strip District. So anybody wants to come to that, check that out. Awesome, man. Well, I will, I'm going to get to work on getting this episode released, because there's a lot of good stuff in there, and I think some things people want to know before the weekend comes. But I appreciate it a ton, Warren, and looking forward to round 2. Thanks for having me on. For sure.